Hello, greetings from the Palais de la Bourse in Bordeaux, and welcome to the last session of the first day of the Bright Days with Brio that we hold usually every year in Bordeaux, but now that we're holding worldwide this year. Anyway, so first, because there are people who don't actually know what Brio is, I thought I'd just tell you just the context of why we're having this session. So Brio, in a nutshell, is a cancer research initiative which runs 3 research programs over 5 years in Bordeaux, involving the University of Bordeaux, the Bordeaux University Hospital, and the Specialized Cancer Hospital in Bordeaux. Our research is very interdisciplinary. That means that we have fundamental biology to clinical biology, including physics, chemistry, mathematics, all the way to epidemiology, even philosophy, sociology, etc. All that to answer our research questions. But whether it is long-term or short-term, our research always has in mind the improvement for the patients. And so my name is Nathalie Caplet, and I'm in charge of communication and patient involvement for Brio. Indeed, in 2016, we started thinking about how we could connect better cancer patients and research, how we could possibly involve them in research. And while we're doing what we can here, starting some initiatives here, I'm also looking out at what else is going on in France and also abroad, and in particular in the UK, where I found lots of things interesting happening. And this is why I'm really delighted that I can welcome 2 wonderful women who, funnily, I both met directly or indirectly via Twitter. And these women will connect with us via, hopefully, if all the technology works properly, will connect with us from the UK. So we're going to talk to Dr. Tessa Richard, who's a senior editor at the world-famous medical journal, the BMJ, which used to be called the British Medical Journal, so some people still know it by this name. She's also a medical doctor, and she's also a cancer patient. And she will tell us about the patient revolution that they have been doing at the BMJ, and also, from her point of view, how she feels that patient can contribute. And then we will talk to Della Ogunleye, who's an amazing Nigerian woman living in London, who's done an incredible journey in the past 10 years from going to thinking that black people cannot get cancer, to now helping others and helping the system and helping research, but I will tell you more about it. So, is it working, and do we have Tessa on the screen? I can hear some talking. Yeah. I can hear some talking. I think we're...
I'm here.
Okay,
hello,
I can hear you.
Tessa speaking.
Okay. I can't see you right now, but maybe they can see you on the...
She can't see me.
I can see you, but I don't know if you can see me.
Here we go. It's coming in front of me now. Oh, here we go. I can now see you and your presentation. Hi, Tessa.
Hi.
Thank you very much for joining us tonight.
It's a great pleasure, and I'm very sorry not to be in Bordeaux with you.
I know, both of you would have really liked, and we would have loved to have you, but next time.
But it's great to have the opportunity to share my perspective on the importance of involving patients in all stages of research and what the BMJ is doing to promote it. But I'm also going to put over my views on how I think COVID has changed the landscape and why working with patients and the public has never been more important given the current challenges we face in providing safe, high-quality healthcare during the pandemic. As we know, over the past few years, there has been much focus on the need to increase the value and reduce waste in research, following the publication of the landmark series in The Lancet in 2014 by Ian Chalmers and co. Based on this series and subsequent work, the authors suggest that around 85% of the then $200 billion annual global spend on research is being wasted. This figure never ceases to astound me. They point to the causes of this, which include poorly designed, conducted, analyzed, and reported studies, needless duplication of work due to failure to first undertake a systematic review of the literature, and most importantly, a failure to address the questions which matter to frontline clinicians and patients. Now, until the onset of the pandemic, I think most patient advocates, myself included, were fairly optimistic that the drive to get patient and public involvement in healthcare, this is often abbreviated to PPI, in health research and health system in general, was advancing steadily. Certainly in the UK, most primary and secondary care providers work with patient and carer advisory groups, although a lot of these are not so much agenda-setting bodies as rubber-stamping ones, as health professionals like to run their documents past their so-called PCAGs for their approval. Similarly, we collect a lot of data, mountains of data on patient experience, but it's rarely used to systematically improve services. Patients are increasingly involved by regulators and in health technology assessment and guideline development, although their role needs to be extended. They're also involved increasingly in medical education, and a recent systematic review by Stenchy Dick shows just how extensively they're involved and gives an overview of the current state of play. But it's research that we're addressing here at this meeting, and I'm pleased to say that it's now moved really center stage in many countries, not least because an increasing number of funders require it. As shown here in the UK, that's the National Institute for Health Research. In the Netherlands, they similarly require it in a lot of research. Canada, US, you'll be familiar with these. Convincing studies, albeit primarily connected by pharma, show that working with patients and co-designing clinical trials, which really are patient-centered, produces a significant return on investment as a result of improved recruitment and retention of study participants. We also know that there's very good, robust methodologies for setting research priorities jointly with patients, most notably via the James Lind Alliance priority setting partnerships. And there's a lot of focus been on the development of patient-reported outcome measures, PROMs, and patient-reported experience measures. And I think centers which really, to my mind, are pushing the envelope here are the Centre for Patient-Reported Outcomes Research in Birmingham, that's CPRAW, and a recent initiative in Australia to jointly agree with patients core outcome sets for COVID research, which, as you know, has just taken off exponentially. Developing patient-reported outcomes with patients rather than simply for them is fundamental. As a patient with stage 3 adrenal cancer facing a very tough decision quite recently about whether to take a highly toxic chemotherapy regimen prior to a proposed 3rd round of major abdominal surgery, I was staggered by the lack of evidence to guide my choice. We know that expensive cancer drugs get on the market on the basis of surrogate outcomes, such as progression-free survival, not measures that make sense to patients, such as improved length of survival and quality of life. This makes no sense to me. Neither, in my view, does the tendency for decisions about treatment options and best decisions to be made by multidisciplinary teams behind closed doors and in ignorance of patients' priorities and preferences. Patients want to be involved in decision making, and they also want access to research, and they're getting increasingly vocal about it. But it's interesting that a recent BMJ paper led by Sarah Schroeter in BMJ Open showed that they don't rank dissemination of research findings to patients as a priority. We know about patient involvement in conferences, we're here, hooray, and in journals. But, despite this, all this promise, for me, this picture of diverging paths, the patient experience, how the system has designed itself, what's happening in research, this speaks very loudly to where we are now. A lot of research and the way services are run are designed by those who work in the services and conduct the research, not the people who use those services and are end users. There is much talk of patient-centered care, but we have a very poor understanding of the reality of patients' journeys, what services they value, and how to share decisions with them. And that was before the pandemic, which has left no one untouched and has sadly, to my mind, greatly increased the divergence in this path. So much has changed as normal health services and research programs have been abandoned or disrupted as resources and manpower has been concentrated on tackling COVID. Healthcare professionals are struggling to set up and embed new normal services, which won't look like yesterday's models. Policy and service changes are mostly being imposed on patients, and they're certainly not being co-designed with them. Politicians talk about waging the war against the virus, and the long-standing commitment to patient and public consultation has largely gone by the board. The concept in healthcare of no decision about us without us has largely been abandoned, a point the BMJ underlined in a recent editorial, and much the same goes for research, where, as you know, there's been a massive increase as a result of COVID. This next slide, for me, epitomizes where we are right now with COVID and cancer and research. For those who don't recognize him, this is Clint Eastwood in a 1966 film called The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. It's a story about hired guns seeking gold in the middle of the American Civil War. The warrior image, gun at hip, speaks to the idea that all it will take is strong men and a few magic therapeutic bullets to win the war. Of course, we all eagerly await an effective vaccine against COVID-19. But global access to it is likely to be limited, blanket protection unlikely, and there seems little doubt, sadly, that COVID-19 will be followed by other pandemics. And it's surely vanishingly unlikely that we will ever really win the war against cancer, given the strong links between cancer and increasing age and socioeconomic deprivation. And no one has as yet found magic bullets for to cure either of those. For those who live with cancer as a chronic disease and know they won't be cured, although they very much hope others will, the war analogy is deeply frustrating. It's a war they can't win. What they want, as we learnt from last year's All Can survey, of 4,000 cancer patients is for clinicians to listen to them and take their concerns seriously. Diagnostic delay as a result of having concerns dismissed by healthcare professionals was a common concern for patients in that study. In the UK, a target has been set of increasing the proportion of patients with cancer diagnosed at stage 1 or 2 disease from 50% to 75%. Another key concern expressed in that survey was the failure to involve them in decisions about what treatment was right for them. Both of those are key areas where more research is needed. But back to the film, the good, the bad, and the ugly. This is very germane too. On the good side, the sudden move to provide care for patients remotely has stimulated clinicians to totally rethink service provision, how to simplify treatment regimes, reduce how often imaging is done, and where clinical trials are actually conducted and how they're conducted. Remote consultations have become the norm and hold promise to give patients a greater role in self-management and make care cheaper, safer, and more efficient. Patients have welcomed having tests and treatments at home. But as the changes have been introduced at speed, we need research to assess their impact. Not all will be good. On the bad side, we know that total disruption of normal health services, including cancer screening and routine diagnostic work, together with patients' reluctance to seek help, has caused massive problems. A modeling study by Maring and colleagues published in The Lancet Oncology a month ago shows high expected increases in avoidable deaths from breast, colorectal, lung, and esophageal cancer. In the UK, a figure of 35,000 excess cancer deaths has been mooted. Another concern has been the drop in funding for research as charities have had their revenue streams drop. Cancer Research UK has had a funding cut of at least 20%. On the ugly side, I must say, I'm sure all of us are very concerned about the fact that the pandemic has fueled already wide health inequities, which have fallen hardest on poor countries, on Black and ethnic minority populations, and disadvantaged communities in rich ones. In some countries, the response to COVID has been meted out by the military, and this has eroded democracy and human rights even further. I'm also of concern that rich countries are rushing to set up deals for early access to vaccines that will leave poor ones on the sidelines. And then we've got the infodemic of fake news, political manipulation, and misrepresentation of research findings. Doubtless you can think of others. So what is the BMJ doing in the face of all this? Well, like other journals, we've set up an open access COVID-19 resource hub where we're publishing not only research papers, but also a wide range of debate and comment articles in relation to the many uncertainties and challenges the pandemic presents. With respect to research, we've deliberately set the bar quite high for acceptance because we've been deluged with research papers, many of which have been poor quality. The pandemic has also made us focus really hard on what we're doing to advance patient and public involvement in healthcare and health research, which is a very ambitious move to try to co-produce our entire content with patients and the public. And the work is steered and helped by patient editors on staff, an international patient advisory panel, and with all our editors thinking patient partnership. Key amongst our changes is the requirement to all authors submitting research papers to include a patient and public involvement statement to tell us what they've done, how they've involved patients in their research, if and how. And we also send papers out for review by patients as well as peer reviewers. We've got 1,000 patients and carers on our database of reviewers, and many volunteered to help us with turning around papers really fast in a matter of a couple of days rather than the usual 2 weeks during the pandemic. We've published at least 5, maybe 10 times the usual number of patient perspectives on the impact of the pandemic on the patient community and the work of patient organizations who've been tremendous at championing the patient's interests and concerns at a time when health professionals have been focusing primarily on protecting the health and well-being of the workforce. I'm pleased to say that we've also started to publish encouraging articles on how the pandemic has mobilized clinicians to work with patients, both in research and in new models of care. This is a slide which shows the questions we ask all authors who submit research papers to us. Were patients involved? If so, how and when? How were the research questions, choice of outcome measures, informed by their priorities, experiences, and preferences? How were they involved in the conduct of the study and the recruitment to it? And particularly, we ask also, are the results going to be sent to the participants and linked communities? We have said that in the future, we envisage that if authors submit clinical research conducted on patients and they have not involved them in any way, we will not accept these papers for publication in the BMJ. Of course, working with patients in research is like working with patients in all other aspects of healthcare. It's challenging, and there are many unanswered questions on the best ways of doing it. This publication last year of the RAND, I think, goes into this in great detail and is well worth a read. And there's good advice on how to do it given by the National Institute for Health Research. And I think that we all have to do what we can to drive up standards and share best practice. I think joint setting of priorities is absolutely crucial. And then the important thing is to incentivize researchers to then pursue those research priorities. So how will we get better? I think it's going to take a lot of continued lobbying by patients and patient advocates about the central importance of involving patients to reduce waste and increase the value of the research enterprise, and raise awareness among health professionals that health literacy is a two-way business. It's not just for patients. We've got to understand patients' journeys and the effect of our treatment fully on their outcome. We know that current policy is putting a lot of emphasis on measuring and raising patient activation to improve outcomes, experience, and reduce cost. I would say exactly the same is required to raise the literacy of health professionals, and this is something which the author, Judith Hibbert, of the patient activation measure also insists is crucial, that clinicians have to realize that part of their job is to help patients acquire the skills, knowledge, and confidence to make informed decisions and manage their own illness. When doctors get ill, the scales fall from their eyes. This book was written by two breast cancer patients, one a professor of primary care in the UK and the other a UK breast surgeon. They wrote it because they were appalled at the lack of insight and literacy of the health professionals who treated them on what really matters to patients and what information patients need to get them through that journey. There's lots of things that will help raise patient and professional literacy, and one that I'm very strongly in favor of is sharing information. Patients must have full access to their own personal information, and we should work more closely with patient organizations. And I think we have to be humble about and aware of the importance of listening to patients and how we often come over to them. You know, this is a lovely tweet I picked up recently. Maggie didn't fail 6 rounds of chemotherapy. Chemo failed her. She didn't progress. The disease progressed. She never complained about the side effects, but she reported them. She didn't become palliative. She needed a new way of treating her while she continued to live that would improve the quality of life for as long as she had. So I'd like to thank you very much for listening to me. I would love to hear from you. Any thoughts or ideas or input into the work that we do with patients, and great to talk to you.
Yes, thanks a lot, Tessa, for this inspiring talk. And I was keen before we joined Della, I was keen just to ask you how do you feel this sort of revolution that you've been putting at the BMG, not just very recently with COVID-19, but it's been quite a few years that things have been moving in this direction. How do you feel the scientists have reacted to that?
Well, I think they've reacted very positively. And it's interesting, some of the researchers who didn't even bother to tell us that they involved patients before, when we started to require the statements, they were happy to report it. And with we've looked at the number of people reporting patient involvement over the years that we've been requiring it, and it's steadily going up, which suggests that there's a definite trend. And I'm very pleased that other medical journals are also asking for this statement, because I think as a single intervention that medical journals can do to simply require of authors if and how they involve the patients in their research sends out a very clear signal that this is good practice. And we put this as a separate clause in the methods of the paper. We have a box, a patient and public involvement box. And I'm quite certain that this will become more and more mainstream, as it will become mainstream to have patient editors working on staff. And some other journals are beginning to do that, set up patient advisory committees. And I think it's a definite direction of travel.
I know you were pioneers, but you're being followed with it, which is great, and also the move for the funding agencies. But that's maybe something else we can talk about in a while. Thank you. We're going to welcome Della so we can have a little chat with her, and then we can have a talk, maybe all three of us. Hello, Della. How are you? Nice to see you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, Della had taken some holiday to come to Bordeaux, and in the end, she has to stay over there in the UK. As I said earlier, you've gone from thinking that cancer could not affect you to now really to empowering yourself, empowering other patients, and helping the system and helping research in many ways. Just to set the scene, you were diagnosed with breast cancer 10 years ago, and you started getting involved after that with a patient support program, in particular through fitness, as I know. And you got also involved in research. You'll tell us all about this. And despite your diagnosis last year with ovarian cancer, you remain involved in really many initiatives. So I don't know if you want just to comment on this journey that's been really in this 10 years.
Yeah, once again, thank you for having me. I'm Della Ogunleye. I was born in the UK, but of Nigerian origin. When I was first diagnosed with breast cancer, I'm just going to, put the scene out there. My initial reaction was, oh, Black people don't have cancer. It's only white people, because I don't see myself represented in the campaigns on cancer. So I was, what's going on? Why is this? And we come from a culture that we don't talk about cancer. So, when cancer happens, it's C and D, cancer, death. And I took it on my head to no, let's talk about this. Even before I got well into research, I said, look, if we don't talk about it, the clinicians won't know symptoms or how to treat us because they've never seen it before. I'll quickly jump to this ovarian cancer now. I went to my GP and I gave him my symptoms. And the first thing he said is drink prune juice. What's prune juice got to do with ovarian cancer? And this is because we don't talk. If we share experience, talk about our symptoms, clinicians will pick things up and say, oh yeah, I've heard this before. I've heard that before. And that's why I keep telling people from my community, let's talk about things. Let's not it be a stigma, a taboo subject. And I took it on myself, and I got involved. Like you said, I had to apply for these roles. And sometimes what I do tell them is, I know you're all white people. There's no one like me on your panel. So how would you know my symptoms? How would you know how it affects me? How would you help me? And sometimes when I discuss my symptoms, people come, oh, wow, really? Is this how it affects you? Like sometimes I said the chemotherapy on Black people turns them darker, blacker. Well, how do you explain that? My skin, because we don't talk about it. And that's why I came out to say, I want to talk about it, see it from my point of view. We have cancer too. And we've started, and I think they've, if we say it, Macmillan, one of the charities in England, said, oh, yeah, that's right. But people don't want to talk. I said, don't worry, I will talk. That's how I became that poster girl talking about cancer, just breaking that stigma of how we can be involved and what we can bring to the table as well as a Black patient. So that's how
Yes,
everything
as
started.
patient for start, and then as Black patient. So
As
there's
Black patient,
two battles in one. I want to stop on the grand challenge, because already even before you were involved in it, I thought it was an interesting initiative. Just for people who don't know, it's an international initiative originally from Cancer Research UK, who now work with the American National Cancer Institute. And basically the idea is to fund with every huge grants of 20 million pounds to address really profound unanswered questions on cancer. For example, why cancer grows in some tissues and not in others. For example, I saw this as an example. Or how can we distinguish between really lethal cancers and those that can be left alone? So they really seek for novel ideas with teams that from around the world, usually multidisciplinary teams. And they offer these international teams really the freedom to think differently. And they involve patients, which is also another great side. So you were involved with them. So how did that work?
I think, as Tessa was saying, the National Institute of Health and Research, you join, and I think you put a criteria of what you want to be involved with. And because I had cancer, I wanted really to focus on cancer. And I applied for one of the roles. And I was interviewed, and they exactly asked me, why do you want to be involved? And I said, oh, as a cancer patient, I don't see myself represented. I want to share my opinions, my lived experience of cancer. And sometimes when they submit the expression of interest, I have to see what's the benefit of the patient in this research. It's, we have to know the future, the treatment, what's it going to be like? How was it done before? How could we do it better? That's how cancer research got us involved, to scrutinize all these people coming forward to ask money for this funding. And, because, most of them are researchers. Some of them haven't had cancer. So the best way to find out is the people who've lived the experience, who can share the experiences, not only of breast cancer, lung cancer. And that's even from the beginning when I saw other cancers, like, oh, wow, there's so many types of cancer. So it's like going to a school and trying to help them and helping myself and educating myself on research. So that's how I got involved.
And so there was a form of selection, of
A
recruitment,
form
as
of
you were saying.
selection, and why I wanted to be involved. Like I said, this is why I want to be involved. I come from a community that hardly talks about anything. And especially the type of cancer normally we have is triple negative. And there's not much research into triple negative cancer. And I think I challenged one of the doctors once at Royal Marsden. Oh yeah, we're working on it, but with my, what I know now, if there were many people that came out to talk about it, there would be a lot of research into it. But because we hardly talk about anything, there wouldn't be research into it. So that's how I'm like that fighting, because someone did it for me to make research better for us.
I can see already that we are having questions, but I have a few more things to put through to you.
Okay.
So we talked about this one, but there are other ones. In particular, you've done quite. You've sort of specialized into artificial intelligence at the moment and into the digital world. So can you tell us a bit more other types of involvement that you've had and how you feel you've been
I
useful?
did something with living and beyond cancer with exercise. Sometimes, they design all this type of exercise, and it's all people designing, but, get a cancer patient involved. So the last one was called Prehab, how to help people. And I was at that meeting with all the professionals, and they were talking about gyms and things. And I said, as a Black woman, when people go to gym, we only think men go to gym. We don't do gym. It's just one of those things. And I said, there's no point in giving me a car if you don't show me how to drive it. Don't tell me how to go to the gym if you don't give me someone to, be there with me to tell me why I'm going there, what I'll be doing at the gym. So this trial came about before you go into your chemotherapy. There's some safe fit trial that you could do in the hospital. So this takes your mind off going, you're thinking, oh, I'm going for my chemo, but at the same time, you're getting fit. We have a cancer, specialist in exercise helping you, because research shows that when you're fit, your well-being, it cures better. You heal better with cancer if you're not too overweight. And these things, I try to prove it myself. So sometimes when I'm running, I showcase this is what I'm doing. And I see the benefit. And sometimes I tweet. You've seen most of my tweets. I'm doing this. I'm keeping fit. So it's just by showcasing. Sometimes you have to show me this is how things are done than just telling me to do it. And that's what I told them. You don't just tell me to go to the
Yeah,
gym.
not
You
just
need to tell me
written
why I'm going to the gym.
recommendations. Yeah,
Yeah.
and there's another initiative you're involved in with patient data.
Yes, that's another safety on, sometimes when you fill a consent form, you just give all your information, but we don't know who this information, who is selling, who is buying. We don't know third party. And patients are a bit, oh, I'm not going to give my information. But because I'm involved in a lot of things now, I've found out a lot of things that this information is being used for, to maybe get better drugs, to maybe get better treatment. There's something behind it. But, we don't trust. It's that trust between the patients and the clinicians. What are you using this data for? So another thing, I became like an advocate, like, look, if you don't talk about it, we can't improve. If you don't give feedbacks, they won't know how to cater for your needs. So it's all about trust, why we're doing things. And I always say, you need to tell me why I'm doing this. This will benefit the patient. Don't just say, this is what we're doing. Tell me why. What's the benefit for a patient? And that's, on this, they keep saying, oh, and sometimes the clinicians don't think like we patients think. Theirs is, oh, we are more like, oh, why are you doing this? I know it's for the benefit of the patient, but in a nutshell, we really need to know what's behind. I hope you're not selling my information to an insurance company who is going to use it and make sure my insurance goes up. I've got cancer. They said, no, that's not why we're doing it, but that's what we're thinking.
Yes, when the patient has to sign for research to be done with his or her data or his or her samples as well, it's an opportunity to create this link and create this trust with the research world, for sure. Okay, maybe we can also ask. You told us already a bit about the diversity. I wanted to ask you about the fact that you were trying to break a taboo and also, on the one hand, get more Black people into clinical trials, and on the other hand, get maybe Black people not to be, both be less worried to get involved and maybe for the professional world to make efforts to involve them, I guess. But there's many things that can be done, but you're on your way. Maybe we can ask Tessa to come back so we can talk all together and see. And we also have questions at the same time. I'm looking, I have a screen there that with questions coming up. So somebody said it had to leave, but I am strongly impressed by the huge difference between the UK and France with matters relating to PPI, patient and public involvement. Can we explain it? And can you give advice to patients and professionals which would help them to make progress together? Well, I can see.
Is this a question for me?
Well, for all of us, I guess. For Tessa as well. Tessa is only very small in the corner. I don't know if people can see her properly, but I can only see you. Maybe you need to stop the sharing of the screen or something. I don't know, but I can only see you very small. But otherwise, don't worry. Maybe what I'm seeing is not even what. Here we go.
Better?
That's perfect.
I can see Tessa now.
The technical side is with us. So anyway.
Get talking. I mean, we're here. The patient communities are networked, linked together as never before. They're talking all the time. Della's on Twitter, along with zillions of other. You know, I have an incredibly rare adrenal cancer. 10 years ago, you know, I didn't have a patient support group. Now I'm part of an international Facebook community, over 1,000 people around the world. I could tell you a lot about the incredible variation in outlook of these patients, and yet they're all lumped together with the same treatment. There is so much knowledge within this community of how the prognosis and the outcomes varies hugely. And there's so much research that is just itching, waiting to be done. The patients are absolutely committed to this. They can be reached. There is no small group cancer anywhere that doesn't have a patient support group. And some, of course, have massive ones. The other thing I think that researchers got to realize that patients are not waiting. You know, there's a lot of patients who are now leading research and highly motivated to do so. And that the feedback I get from patient advocates is that the working together can be mutually inspiring. It engenders a lot of respect among the patient community to see what the researchers are doing and their commitment to it. But working with patients helps researchers think out of the box, have new ideas, and maybe, you know, rediscover why on earth it is they get out of bed in the morning. You know, it really matters.
Yes, because I mean, in our community, it's not only clinical research; it's also a lot of different types of research.
I'm aware of that, but there's publications around around the importance of involving patients in preclinical research, and I can, you know, I've got papers, you know, here around how you do it, including, you know, a recent one by McCarthy in PLOS One. You know, it is becoming the norm.
But you see, the person who wrote this comment, he's the president of our regional ethical agency, and he's saying he's very impressed, I guess, not in a positive way, about the huge difference between the UK and France. I know you probably still think, in particular now with COVID-19, that it's not done at its best in the UK, but we have a long way to go here. So that's why I'm happy to have you two to advocate and show us the route, because there's so many things that we can do and that we will do. But I don't know why it has gone, maybe why the UK has led in that. Do you have any idea on that? Well, you're seeing scientists from a lot of different countries, Tessa.
I think it's interesting. There is a divide within Europe. I would say that if you look at Sweden, Denmark, and the Netherlands in particular, they're very, very good with patient involvement and research, and so is Canada. But other countries less so. Southern Europe, and maybe a big chunk of France feels like Southern Europe if you live in the north of Europe. You know, there seems to be a bit of a divide, but there are now this, an international network of patient and public involvement in research, and which is a growing band, and they're producing some really good regular webinars and taking people right back to the beginning about why do it, how to do it. It's a global network that formed about 2 years ago, and it's specifically to help people in countries who aren't quite so far ahead. So that's a resource that's worth looking at.
It's for me to look at all of that and help
I'll send you a
our
link.
scientists locally.
We'll keep sending you what we get.
We have a question on prevention actions, and have you had any thoughts, or have you ever seen any initiatives linked to prevention? Well, I guess also what you were saying with the fitness is a way. It's the idea is a prevention of, well, not of cancer.
Yeah, I can say maybe what I didn't know then. Like I said, I wasn't exercising, and you know how everything fits with, if you're fit, you're less likely to have cancer and things. Well, you don't believe all that things until it happens to you. A typical example of blood pressure, that's another thing maybe within the Black community, and we always say do this, do that. And 2 different doctors told me 2 different things. One said, oh, it's common in your community, and another one said, if you exercise, it get better. And I got myself a Fitbit, and I'm like, oh, this does work, and I said, I don't want, all these tablets and chemotherapy has a side effect. I said, I don't want to depend on tablets. I've had a lot of chemo in my life that I really want to do it my way. Like if I keep fit, and I see the difference, if I go running, if I do, and if I don't do anything, I feel, but as soon as I start doing things, I feel better myself. And then my blood pressure, I monitor it myself. These are all the things like, oh no, it's just common within you. But I don't want to take, oh, it's common within me if I could help myself. So that's just a little bit of example of things can work if you look after yourself, if you stop eating too much. I know I love cake, I love things, but just a little things in moderation.
And if you trust, if you trust yourself that you can, if you're empowered enough to
discipline yourself. Yeah.
No, but I mean, if you're empowered enough that you can make your own decisions, and that you don't need to necessarily trust if you're told you don't, it's not going to change. Yeah. Well, we have another question which is related to the differences in France, but I'm not sure that's it's quite difficult seen from over there why things are like that over here. Even more difficulties, I think, here to talk about the differences between Black people, white people. Probably even more difficult in France, I think. It's even more work here. So I don't know if we have any more questions, but I think we're going to be having to finish because we started quite late already. I think you both gave really inspiring messages, and I hope that our scientists, I mean, this is being recorded, so also.
Oops,
I can't hear you. We can't hear you.
This one maybe. Just to finish anyway, just to thank you both very, very much.
Thanks for having us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I mean, my concluding comment is we're better together. We're stronger together.
We're stronger together. We can do it.
Patients and healthcare professionals and researchers, we need to be together.
Yeah, and as you said, it's very positive for both sides, and I think people have to try and see what we can do. I mean, sometimes we didn't go through everything you did, Della, but sometimes it's just helping them to write a lay summary, even though in France it's not compulsory, but it will become probably compulsory one day. But it can be just that, and that will help them get
co-designing the
fun.
application form and looking for the benefit, the outcomes for patients, what's going to be the outcomes for patients.
I think there isn't a stage in the research process where involving patients
somebody is asking
should not
me,
be done.
can we have the details of the global network of patients?
I'll send you the link
send
to
it to me, and we'll put that. We have at the moment in French, but we have a website specifically for our activities with patients.
I'll send you all the. I can send you all the references I mentioned too, if that would be helpful.
Oh dear.
Some of them are on the slides, but not all of them.
It's the end of the day. We've used all the microphones. None of them work anymore.
It's very late. It's very late.
It's very
Anyway,
late.
thanks
Yeah,
again,
I know.
and
Well
have a
done.
good night, and thanks again
Thanks
for joining us.
having us. Thank
Bye.
you. Good
Thank
luck
you.
for tomorrow. Bye. Bye.
Bye.